microphone. So Billy, thank you very much again for joining us. You're very, very welcome, and I will now pass over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Glenda, and I do apologize for my voice. Yesterday I had no voice whatsoever, so my resilience is definitely being tested. In the earlier session, I was talking about the importance of passion to be successful, because it's the passion that gives you the purpose. But there's something that's even more important than passion towards achievement, and that is resilience. And according to Harvard University, resilience is more important than education, it's more important than training, and even experience. So this thing, resilience, seems to be the magical thing. And I'll be honest with you, I agree 100% with that. And in my experience over the years, I find that the people who are most resilient are the ones who are successful. And yet, we're not quite sure if you're born with it or you develop it. It's only a personal opinion, but I think some people are born resilient, and I think others have to learn how to be resilient. And it is something, it is a skill that you can pick up. But what I would want to do is to get back to practical reality, so that we get rid of all the chaff. Because one of the things you read in self-help books is that it's all about positive thinking. And people use this term, positive thinking, as if this is the answer to everything. Let us deal with reality. That's not the way the human brain works. Fact number one, the brain responds to positive and negative stimuli. It's wired that way. So in our brain, we are wired to be both positive and negative. And some of us will have more a positive bias in our brain, and some will have more a negative bias. Secondly, the brain responds more to negative stimuli than it does to positive stimuli. That's also a fact. Now, the reason for that is extremely simple. If you go out today and you're crossing the road, you do not come up to the curb and march straight out saying, I'm positive I will get across the road. And then a car comes and takes you out. Your brain says, stop, look for danger. If there's no danger coming, then we take positive action. So that is how we survive. We have to think negatively to survive. And that's been in us since we were the primitive hunter-gatherer, because we had been looking for danger constantly. If you do your advanced driving course, what do they teach you? Look for danger. So we are built to be negative as well as positive. So here's my theory on it. I think there are three types of thinkers. Number one, the positive thinker. This is the person who has read the self-help book. They come into university one day, they're dosed with the flu, they're coughing up their lungs, their nose is running, their eyes are streaming. You ask them how they are, and they say, I'm great. They're not, they're sick, they're passing it on to everyone, and should just be got rid of. So that's the positive thinker. The second one is the negative thinker. And we all know people like this. These are the people who sit and they moan and they groan and they accept responsibility for nothing. But you know what? It's everybody else's fault. Now, I'm sure everybody watching this today knows someone like that. The third one, it's just pure common sense. It's called positive attitude. And what positive attitude does is says, right, in this upcoming event, what's the worst thing can happen? How do I prepare for that? What's the best thing can happen? How do I prepare for that? So no matter what happens, you're prepared. Now, I don't know about you. I tend to rush into things. So therefore, whenever I'm doing a project, I always want someone on my side who can see the issues that could possibly happen. And some people will call these people negative. No, they're not. They're looking for problems and then they find solutions. And that's what positive attitude is. So attitude will say, yes, I've done wrong. How do I fix this? Yes, that was a mistake. How do I make sure I don't do that again? That's positive attitude. It's a much healthier approach, much better than this thing called positive thinking. Now, have you noticed we all talk to ourselves in our heads, and maybe even as I'm speaking here today, there's a little voice in your head saying something, and I'm just hoping it's not that guy's talking total rubbish, right? There's a little voice going on in your head, and it's constantly talking to yourself. And that voice can either be positive or it can be negative. Now, the chances are it's more likely to be negative. And that negativity is constantly going around in our head. You know, it could be criticizing yourself, it could be criticizing others, it could be judging others, it can be looking at the negative side of life. And let's be frank, we haven't had much of a chance to think positive over this last year because of lockdown. It's all been wall-to-wall COVID-19. So we've been inundated with negativity. So as a result, our inner voice tends to be negative as well. That needs to change. If we're going to build resilience, that needs to change. So the first thing is you have to be aware of it. You have to understand, yes, I do talk to myself all the time, and there's not one of us who don't. Right? So you have to be aware, yes, I talk to myself. Then you have to ask yourself, well, is that talk, is it predominantly negative or is it predominantly positive? Now, I'm a realistic person. A little bit of negativity and a bit of moaning now again does nobody any harm. But if it's all that, then it's going to do serious harm. So you have to be aware, is my voice negative or is it positive? And you have to talk to yourself properly. Now, here's something. I did something in the last session about communication. And I said that when you're talking to other people, you should talk in the third party instead of talking about yourself. You should not use the words I, me, my, and mine, and instead of use the words you and yours. It's exactly the same as when you're talking to yourself. When you're talking to yourself in your own head, please avoid first party statements like, I am useless, I can do this, I can do that. For some reason, that has a major impact to us psychologically. They're not sure why, but they know that it does. But what they do say is when you're talking to yourself, talk to yourself as if you're talking to a friend. And you talk to yourself in the third party. So if I'm talking to myself, I'll be saying, okay, Dixon, this is the way you're going to go. Dixon, do you want to go out in the car today? Or Billy, are you wanting to do this? So you talk to yourself in the third party. Come on, you know you can do this. Come on, you should have done that. Come on, let's go to the gym. So you're talking to yourself like that instead of I'm going to the gym, I'm going to do this. So that's the first thing. Always talk to yourself in the third party. And then please do not use definite statements. Now, what I mean by this, later on today, I'm going to go to the gym. And if I say, for example, I'm going to be doing bench press, and I put 50, 60, 70 kilos on the barbell, and I lie underneath it, I can say one of two things. Come on, Dixon, you will do this. Now you notice that that's a definite, you will do this. And I lift that bar off, and it comes down, and I can't move it. By the fact that I have said I will do this makes me a failure. I have failed because I said I will do this. So using definite statements is a no-no. So therefore, it is better to use open statements. Lie underneath the bench again, I will say to myself, come on, Dixon, you can do this. Now, can doesn't mean you will do it at that particular moment in time. It just means you can or will eventually. So if I take it down and it doesn't go up, it means I can't do it at that moment in time. I've left myself wriggle room. So I'm no longer a failure. So instead of using definite statements, use general statements or open statements. Doesn't sound like much, but believe me, that makes a huge difference. So don't be using the words I, use the words you or your name. And if you watch Ronaldo, it's like criticism. We criticize ourselves. See, self-criticism is one of the worst things, and most of us are guilty of it. I know I was really, really guilty of this one because I grew up believing I was thick and stupid. And if I did something wrong, I always said, oh, come on, Dixon, you're just thick and stupid. So I was constantly reinforcing the negative. And that's dangerous. I refer to a footballer, fabulous footballer called Ronaldo. And Ronaldo talks to himself all the time. You can see him when he's on the pitch, he's talking to himself. Now, there are reasons why he's doing this. But if he does something wrong, you'll see him coming down the field and he's his head, he's shaking his fists. But he's not saying he's useless. He never does that. He'll be saying things like, come on, you can do better than that. Come on, you made a mistake and this is what you shouldn't do that again. So what he's actually doing, he's criticizing, but not in a negative way. So that self-criticism even can be corralled so that it doesn't have that same impact. One of the things that an awful lot of people are doing is mantras. They think this builds them up as individuals. And I have tried this, and we're going to do this. Now, I know I can't hear anyone, but I would like everybody to do this. After 3, I want you to go, I'm a winner, I'm a winner, I'm a winner. And I want you to repeat this until I say stop. All right? Because this is one of the things that get you to do. Right. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. I'm a winner. Come on, really mean it. I really mean it. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. Now, we'll stop. Now, ask yourself this. How many of you now feel like a winner? Or how many of you feel like a right plonker doing that? I would have been the plonker. You see, that doesn't work. I remember I used to do this, and I remember one morning I was looking in the mirror in the morning, I go, I'm a winner, I'm a winner. And then I was driving to work and I hit the curb and I went, and I cursed. And all of a sudden, all the I'm the winners go out the window. So those positive mantras don't work. It didn't work for me. Now, for some people, they do work. So some people swear by them. So if they work for you, do them. But do them, instead of saying, I'm a winner, say, you're a winner. Use the third party again. You know you can do this. Or you are beautiful. I know a lot of people use that one. So use it in the third party. Now, as I said, it's not an exact science. Some swear by them. Some think they're a waste of time. I think the truth lies in between somewhere. The other one, of course, is visualization. Now, over the years, I've done a lot of work in sport. And this is one of the things that's brought by every coach to every team, visualization. And there's this experiment that was apparently conducted in the 1950s. Now, what they did, they had 2 basketball teams. And one basketball team, they got to practice throwing hoops all week. So what was happening, they maybe get 7 out of 10 of every hoop that they threw. The other team, they didn't let them on the court all week. So what they did, they visualized throwing hoops. So therefore they visualized getting every hoop in. At the end of the week, the match was held, and the team that won was the one that did the visualization. And there's the myth, because that never happened. That experiment never, ever took place. It's one of these urban myths that have built up over the years. Now, there's oceans of research have looked into this. Visualization on its own does not work. Fact. Visualization with added actions does work. So once you know how to do something, then you can visualize it and improve it. but it only works if you have action to back it up. I hope that makes sense, because that's a biggie. Okay, so visualization, by all means use it, but use it in context along with doing the exercises. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Resilience is one of these subjects that everybody talks about. And every single one of us are going to face setbacks. Now, some setbacks have larger life changes than others. And how we deal with those setbacks will actually determine the path that we take from there on in. There's this old saying that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Absolute nonsense. That is such a bad statement. I've seen people's lives totally destroyed by a setback because they didn't adapt to it. So this thing that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We're supposed to learn from our experiences. Most of us don't, unfortunately. And I read an academic study, it was a PhD thesis, and they reckon that the average person will face a minimum of 8 serious setbacks throughout their life. How they arrive at a figure like that, I'm not quite sure, but that's what this academic study. But the bottom line is we will all face setbacks. So how do we deal with these setbacks? How do we make sure we have that bounce quality, that when we knock back, we come back again? A number of years ago, and some of you will have heard this story before, a number of years ago, I was working abroad. And somehow or other, we believe it was raspberries, we're not quite sure, a toxin got into my system. And it attacked my brain and it attacked my liver. And a week later, I was working in Newcastle upon Tyne at a medical conference. And this consultant came up to me and says, "Billy, you're very seriously ill." And that night, I was taken into hospital and immediately put onto a life support machine. That took me out of action for over a year. I lost everything. And because it had attacked the brain, for 3 months of that year, I had to be put in suicide watch. So whenever people talk to me about resilience, they really do need to know what they're talking about. One of the things that I found, which is why I put positive thinking right at the start, people were saying to me, "Come on, Billy, you've got to think positive." And all you wanted to do was take a baseball bat to them. Because here are the facts. That when you're down, the one thing you cannot do is change your thinking. And yet that's the first thing everybody will tell you to do. You have to think differently. You have to think positive. You tell me how to do that. That when you're feeling so low, how do you change your thinking? And I remember lying in the bed and I was feeling really sorry for myself. I knew I was going to recover physically, but the mental recovery was taking longer than I thought it would. And I was put in antidepressants and told at that stage I was going to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life. I haven't touched an antidepressant in over 7 years. And people say, "Well, how have you managed that?" I was lying on the ward one day and I noticed somebody walking past. And this person was walking with their head down, their shoulders slumped, and they were trailing their feet. And I thought, well, I do the same thing. I'm walking around with a pole on the drip and I'm trailing my feet, my head's down, I'm not making eye contact, and I'm feeling really sorry for myself. And at that moment in time, I thought, you know what? My attitude is a reflection of my behavior is a reflection of my attitude. My brain was saying, "Billy, you're sick. So now you have to act sick." And we all know how sick people carry themselves. And that got me thought, well, I know I can't change my thinking, but perhaps I can change my behavior. So what I forced myself to do, and believe me, it was a real effort, I forced myself to change my posture and look at people and smile and lift my feet when I walked. And by changing my behaviors, my attitude slowly followed. And I honestly swear that I would not be talking to you today if I hadn't done that. Now, if you only remember 3 words about this whole presentation, the 3 words I will want you to take away here today is behavior changes attitude. There are 3 extremely simple words, but they have a profound effect on you. And isn't it interesting that one of the top treatments for depression today is behavioral therapy? In other words, they get people to change their behaviors. Now, what I'm going to do is give you a little toolkit that you can take away, have a bit of fun with, and it works. That's the lovely thing about this. It definitely works. Now, I used this in the previous presentation as well. It's funny how the presentations all cross over. The basics, the fundamentals. What you have to do is change routines. Now, we all follow routines. When we get up in the morning, we follow a routine, which gets us out of the house at exactly the right time. Try this tomorrow. Change routines. I mean, people watching here today will either be right-leggers or left-leggers. Nothing to do with religion whatsoever. It's when you're putting your underpants on in the morning, do you put your left leg in first or do you put your right leg in first? Tomorrow morning, put a different leg in first. Change the routine. Change the routine. If you have your shower first and then your breakfast, have your breakfast first and then your shower. Do you dress your top half first and then your bottom half? Change it around. This is what excuse me, Alex Ferguson did with the Manchester United team. Every time they won something, rather than let them get static, he changed everything. He changed the way they trained, how they trained, he changed the background, he changed things. So everybody thought, oh, this is fresh and good. And by changing routines, kept them mentally active. Change routines. And here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that can make a massive difference to how you feel about yourself. So when you're feeling a bit down, when you're feeling a bit low, a bit under the weather, force yourself to do the following things. Number 1, get good posture. Posture gets you breathing properly, makes you feel better. And the interesting thing is, all the research on these things have proven through neuroscience that these things change the flow of neurons within your brain. And simply by changing your posture, because everything else changes, your organs are all lying in a row, and where they should be, you're breathing properly, the flow of neurons automatically change. So number 1 is always posture. Number 2 is how you walk. So keep your shoulders relaxed, swing your arms, lift your feet, keep your head up. And that will help how you feel. Number 3, make eye contact with people. Seems simple, but profound. I always remember lying in that hospital bed and you don't feel human. And then all of a sudden, the nurse would put their head around the corner, make eye contact. Hiya, Billy. And all of a sudden, you felt human again. So eye contact is important for you and for other people. Smile. You may not feel like it, but once you smile, it changes how you think. Tone of voice. Now, the research into this is remarkable because they did loads and loads of experiments in neuroscience, and they got people to change their tone of voice. And by changing the tone of voice, it was remarkable the effect it had on the flow of neurons within the brain. It made people more positive. And you know, and I know, if I talk like that there, that's the way I'm going to feel. And in Northern Ireland, that's the way we are. You know, you ask somebody how you doing today? Oh, I'm hanging together. Isn't that right? That's the way you do. Isn't that an awful old grey day? Or how many tablets are you on? You know, we exaggerate the negativity with the tone of voice, or we exaggerate the positivity with the tone of voice. And the last one, which is one we will go into in greater depth in the next session, is your physical appearance. How you present yourself, how you dress. Have you noticed that when you put on certain things, it makes you feel differently? I mean, I always put on a shirt and tie when I'm going to do a presentation. Why? Because it puts my head in work mode. When I go to the gym, I put on my gym kit. Now, even when I was training at home and I didn't have to put on gym kit, I still put it on because it put me into that frame of mind. So dress accordingly, right? Your appearance is massive and it makes you feel different. And I know over this past year, it's been so easy just to put on the sloppy joes and tracksuits when we're just working from home. And that's easy to do. But I think that has, and that's only my opinion, but I think that has an effect on your mental health. And GPs, funny enough, have been trained to recognize someone's appearance when they walk through the door because it has a big impact on how that person is really feeling. So let me go through those. It is posture, walk, eye contact, smile, tone of voice, and appearance. Those are things that you can do every single day. And changing those behaviors has a major impact on your attitude. Now, of course, lots of other behaviors that we can change. But I want to tell you a true story because I learned an awful lot from one man. And his name was Martin. And Martin, many years ago, was, I don't know what his title was, but he was head of all the social workers in Northern Ireland. And he used to come to a class, a sports class that I used to coach. And mentally, this man was immense. He was so strong mentally. And he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It was in his pancreas, in his liver, and his bones. And his consultant said to him, Martin, I'm giving you 9 months maximum. And Martin says, listen, I know I have to accept the disease, but I'm not accepting the time. Martin actually lived 9 years against all the odds. And him and I used to talk at great lengths. And he told me one day, he says, Billy, all of us have a psychological anchor. When we're down, we revert to this psychological anchor. Now, in my case, it was always thick and stupid because that was my background. And every time I did something wrong, or every time I felt a bit blue or down or depressed, I would bring that up. Martin's psychological anchor was his illness, his terminal illness. Now, what was happening? Friends and family were coming to his house and saying, how are you doing today, Martin? Are you all right? Oh, you're looking better today. Now, they mean well, but actually what they're doing, they're reinforcing the fact that he is sick. They're making him think in. He lost his job. Because he's no job, that makes him think, I'm ill. He had to have his treatment every day. The nurse would come into his house either in the morning or the afternoon, as long as he was sitting waiting for the nurse. It was making him think, I'm ill. He's thinking in. Setbacks were the big problem. Every setback was making him think, I'm ill. Now, if you look at every one of those things, what they were doing, they were making him think in. Now, this is important. People with no resilience, people who lack confidence, people who are depressed, and dare I say, people who are suicidal all have one thing in common. They think in continuously. Now, I want to be very open here. It is all right to think in now and again and feel sorry for yourself. We all do it, me included. I mean, I still have my dark days that I struggle with. but I know they're coming to an end. So I think in, and I feel sorry for myself, but I accept it and I embrace it and say, well, tomorrow's going to be better. So it's all right to think that way every now and again. But if you think continuously like that, then it becomes really, really dangerous. Now, this is what Martin put his life expectancy up to 9 years. He said to his friends and family, when you come in here, don't talk about my illness at all. We come in here and we have a bit of crack, we have a drink, and we have a bit of fun. And by doing that, that's getting him to think away from himself. He had lost his job. But what he did, he started a discussion group in the local hospital for terminal cancer patients. It started off as once a month, became once a fortnight, and now the model has been taken throughout the United Kingdom and Ireland. It was such a success. He's now thinking out the way. He made arrangements and he had the nurse at his house every morning at 8:30, leaving him the rest of the day to do what he wants. Setbacks, as I said, they were the big challenge, but he wrote a book. He published a play. He became an expert on the Masonic order, even though he wasn't a member. And researchers used to come from all over the world to find out about the Masonic order. A man who voted nationalist became one of the leading experts in the Orange Order in the world, and I love the irony of that. And again, people who come from all over the world, media companies, to find out from him. So every time he got a setback, he did something to distract himself, and he thought out the way. And what comes from that is people with resilience, people who have confidence, and people with good mental health all have one thing in common. But for the majority of the time, that's the way they think out. They're always thinking out. And I don't know if you know this, if you read any research on this, and in relation especially to mental health, people who help other people always have better mental health. I remember whenever I went through a particular bad time and I couldn't see my family or anything, I was going through a divorce. And I spent a Christmas on my own and I felt really sorry for myself. The following Christmas, I served soup to the homeless and it was brilliant. Why? Because I was thinking that way instead of thinking this way. That's why that's important. Now, what came out of that is a little exercise I want you to do now. And if you have access to a pen and paper, would you please do the following exercise? Because it's such an important exercise, this one. I can't emphasize how important it is. If you get a piece of paper and if you divide it in two, now you can do this on your phone as well. And this is called the Energy Audit. And on one side of the page, would you put energizers, the title energizers, and on the other side of the page, would you put the title de-energizers? Now, have you noticed there are some people, whenever you spend time with them, they make you feel brilliant and they fill you full of energy and you're bouncing like Tigger. Have you ever noticed that? And then there are other people you spend time with and they just drain you. Now, I have a friend. I've known this guy from he was 3-year-old. He's the godfather to my 2 children. He left school basically when he was 13. And he hasn't done an awful lot in terms of career. He was a strong man, but totally honest, totally trustworthy, but unbelievably negative. And he came over to my house last year during May in that lovely sunny period, and the weather was fantastic. And he's one of these people who locks his car 4 times. Locks it, checks it, locks it, checks it, locks it, checks it. And I opened up the door and I says, "Hiya, Ken, boy, isn't that a brilliant day?" Ken's answer was, but the long range forecast bad. He's always got something negative. Every June, when it comes near June the 21st, he says, "The days are on the change soon." You know, he's always glass half time. He comes into my house, he leaves my house that night, he's bouncing, he spins the tires, drives off, energy. I close the door and I'm absolutely knackered. I'm drained. Now I have to spend time with him because he's a mate. And there are people we spend time with and we know they're negative. But on balance, you need to be spending more time with people who are positive than negative, which is why we do this exercise. Would you please make a list of everyone you know? Who are the people who energize you and who are the people who de-energize you? Those that do both, put them in the line in the middle. It's an interesting exercise. So just make your list. The last time I did this, I heard this woman saying, "My effing husband." So I guess he must have been a de-energizer. Now, when you have your list made, would you please underline the people you spend most time with? I'm just trying to get you to think here, looking at everybody you spend time with. Because at the end of the day or the end of the week, you need to have more energy coming in than going out. And if you take the health service at the minute, nurses especially are suffering from compassionate fatigue. Everything they are doing is give, 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 give. But nothing is coming back in again. And as a result, there's a big imbalance. This actually highlighted the fact that GPs had the highest suicide rate of any occupation back in the 1990s. And what was happening, especially in the inner city, right, they had huge numbers of suicides. And you think GPs of all people should have good mental health. But what was happening, they were getting no energy from their patients, de-energized. The government were asking them to change their terms of practice, de-energized. The inner city ones especially were being pounded all the time. And as a result, an awful lot of them took their own lives. That's how important this is. So the question that you have to ask yourself, where should I be putting my priority? I have decided I'm going to spend as little time as possible with de-energizers and as much time as possible with energizers. It's been a conscious decision. I made a conscious decision, especially after what I went through, to avoid some people completely, just to avoid them. No longer part of my life. That is a very personal decision, and I know in some cases it can be very hard, but the danger is compassionate fatigue. Compassion fatigue can be an absolute killer. Now here's the other thing. If other people were writing down your name, what side would they put you on? Are you an energizer or are you a de-energizer? That's a very sobering thought. Now, when you have that done, draw a line underneath that. And now make a list of all the things that you do that give you energy and all the things that you do that de-energize you. What are the things that energize you and what are the things that de-energize you? Okay, now, some people find ironing an energizer. Other people find ironing a de-energizer. Everybody will be different in this. But I will expect that most people will have similar things listed. And it'd be really interesting to find out how many people actually put down exercise as one. And that exercise can be a walk, it can be going to the gym, it can be whatever you want it to be. But there's one. Now, these are the things that definitely work. And exercise is one of the main ones. Oh, somebody's put up sea swimming. Wow, that's brilliant. Exercise and sleep. Yeah, sleep's a huge one. So exercise is number one. Helping others, but be aware of compassion fatigue. Learning something new. That's a big one. Because what it does, it distracts and makes you focus. Music. Many people, be interested to see how many people put music down. Meditation. Some people use that. Nature. Being out in nature is great for our mental health. And a really big one, sun exposure. Now, we don't get enough sun in this country. And yet, when the sun is out, we need to be giving our skin at least 20 minutes sun exposure before we put on any sunblock. I do a series of conferences around the Republic of Ireland to MS sufferers. It's like a series of workshops. And one of the things we do and talk about is sun exposure. And this consultant said one day, sun exposure is so important. And this fellow in the audience says, I agree with that, sir. He says, even in the wintertime, if the sun is out, I'm out in my boxer shorts. And I think there's one hard man, but you understand the principle. Now, some other ones here, really good ones coming out. Yes, fresh air and my dog, going for a drive. Try yoga or Pilates. Yeah, brilliant. Getting my hair done, that's got a real challenge for me. Sea swimming again, just walking the beach, Pilates.
Becca has a question there, Billy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can go up to it. Becca's saying, lots of people always tell me to exercise for my mental health, but I've struggled with an ED for years and find it triggers me instead. How could I get around that?
What's the ED? Excuse my ignorance. What's the ED?
Becca, do you want to explain ID? Eating disorder? Yeah, sorry, Billy, can you see that one? She says she's had an eating disorder for years and she finds
I just don't know what ED is. I'm showing my ignorance here and I do apologize for that.
Yeah, no, it's an eating disorder.
Oh, an eating disorder. Of course. Oh, that is something I wouldn't be qualified to answer on that one. Unfortunately, I wish I could. That is a professional person would have to answer that one. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't even attempt to address that.
No, but thanks for recognizing that.
Yeah. Going for a drive, fresh air on my dog, getting the hair done, going to the beach. Yeah, there's one. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I was an inpatient years ago and addicted to the gym. That's my addiction. Some people have addictive personalities, and I am addicted, or would have been addicted to the gym. I'd have gone every day to my detriment. Instead of improving my fitness levels and body condition, I was doing myself damage. So I had to get professional advice and counselling on that one to help me through that. But I noticed a lot of the other guys at the gym that I training or did training is real hardcore and have body dysmorphia. These guys have 20-inch arms and they look at themselves in the mirror and they think I'm skinny. So they have that in their head, and that is an issue. How you overcome that is very, very difficult. Paddle boarding, yeah. Oh, I'm a Pilates instructor. Yeah. Brilliant. This is very personal. Here's the thing about all of this here. You must never give up the things you enjoy. Because if you do, then you're going to an area that's unpredictable. I was once at a mental health conference, and this guy stood up and he says, I'm a carer for my mother and I'm severely depressed. And he says, the reason is very, very simple. I used to love running. I used to love going to the cinema, and I used to love going out with my mates for a pint. He says, I have given all of those things up, and as a result, I have no escape, and I suffer from depression. He says, however, what we're going to do is take up the running again, go to the cinema again, and go out with my mates. Now you can see how people are going to struggle with this, especially if your activity involves other people during lockdown. So resilience has become even more difficult during lockdown than it has before. Okay, let's move on.
Mary had a question there. I just wanted to sort of pick it up. It's a little back when you were talking about overcoming the illness that you had that put you in the hospital. And Mary was saying it is impressive how you overcame those. And did you feel that you had to take it very slowly at the start?
Yes is the answer. You can't rush this. It is something that is evolution rather than revolution. And I would say it took me about 6 months really to get my head back to where it used to be. And as I say, I still have my dark days, still go down a bit, but now I realize that it's only temporary, so it doesn't keep me down. And there's a big difference, and I want people to realize this. There is a huge difference between feeling down and depression. It is a world apart. And one of the things that I find frustrating, there are a lot of celebrities, and I've worked with some of them, who say they're depressed, but they're not depressed. They're actually down, right? Because depression is a chemical condition. Feeling down is just, as it says, you're down, you're upset about something. So there's a world of difference between the two. Okay, now, if all else fails, and if you've made a mistake and you're beating yourself up, or if you've gone through a situation and you're really struggling, the process that therapists and I've been using for years, and I find it invaluable. It's a really simple one. That's the lovely thing about these things. You see, the thing is, when you write about yourself on paper, for some reason, we tend not to tell lies about ourselves. When we talk to ourselves in our heads, we lie to ourselves all the time. Once you put it in paper, for some reason, something changes. So if you're going through something, or if you've made a mistake and you're beating yourself up, follow a 3-step process. Pen and paper, and step number 1 is write down what the cause of the situation is, or what the mistake was. Now, this is called admission. What you're actually doing is admitting something went wrong, or you are admitting you are feeling down. So that's the first thing, is admission. The second part is the really important bit, because what happens whenever something goes wrong, we put that in our brain, and then other stuff that's irrelevant is pulled in there. It's all spun around like in the washing machine, and everything becomes exaggerated and things are taken out of context. People become enemies who are never enemies, and so on. So step number 2, what you do, you write down exactly how this is making you feel. And by writing it down, it gets rid of all the garbage. You only write down what is relevant and what is true. That's the really important bit. Now, what you do, once you have that done, that is the time when you talk to someone. Now, you only talk to 1 or 2 people. You only talk to those people you can trust and who are non-judgmental. And you don't talk to too many, because talk too many, then your issue becomes exaggerated. All right. So that's step number 2. Step number 3. People say we learn from our mistakes. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people do not learn from their mistakes. I've done numerous courses. The last one was on domestic violence, and people who are in that situation keep going back to the same person time and time and time again, so they don't learn from their mistakes. And there are reasons for that. So this is why we do step number 3. Step number 3, you write down what you have learned from this experience. That works. So in fact, what I have a little book that I keep, and every time I go through something or make a mistake, that's what I do. But making mistakes in life, again, is part of nature. We're all going to make them. And it is how you accept these. Now, the way I've accepted making mistakes, I know every year I'm going to make so many fluffs during a presentation, or I'm going to make so many mistakes, or I'm going to say something that I shouldn't have said. That's inevitable in this job. So rather than beat myself up now, what I do, I say, brilliant. That's one less to face this year. So it's an attitude you have to develop. Another way of doing it, if you make a mistake, do what a lot of sports people do or other people do. Some people write the mistake on a piece of paper, crumple it up and throw it away. One of the greatest all-round rugby players, every time he made a mistake, he pulled out a piece of grass that represented the mistake and he threw the mistake away. So how we deal with mistakes can be what determines that simple path we're going to take from there on in. It's like footballers during the start of a match. Some of them, if they don't get the right touch right at the start, then that's them out of the rest of the game. And it's how do you tell them how to overcome that? The grass could be one of those. So how you deal with mistakes is an important one to look at. Now, have we any questions before we wind this session up? Because resilience is a massive subject, and I'm talking a lot from experience here.
There have a few comments in there, Billy, and the rest of you, please feel free to pop in a question into the chat box there or put your hand up. A couple of students are there talking about self-reflection, both in nursing and in teaching. And I guess that is a real skill to be able to self-reflect rather than just continually beat yourself up.
Yes, self-reflection is brilliant if you do it with that little voice. Talk to yourself as if you're talking to a friend, and I'm a big believer in that. Yes, I see somebody there is writing fiction is a fabulous passion. Writing fiction. Any others? Anybody else want to ask a question? Right. Well, let's just summarize. Resilience, to me, first of all, it's not an exact science. It's one of these things a lot of people do an awful lot of talking about, but if you look at it practically, when people are down, it is very, very difficult to change your thinking. And that's just one of the sad facts of life. But what we can do, even when we're feeling down, is change our behavior. And by changing behavior, gradually what happens, our attitude will follow. So if you only remember 3 words from here today, please, please, please remember, behavior changes attitude. Because that's what saved me. That's why I am talking to you here today. If I hadn't done that, I don't know where I would have been. I've been lost in the desert somewhere. So please just spread those 3 words to everyone. Tell everyone about them. Let's get it out there. And perhaps we can help a few more people in terms of mental health. And can I thank you so much for listening, because this is such an important subject to me.
It's brilliant. Billy, thank you so much. I hope you can see all of the comments that are coming in there from all of the students and Ulster University friends who have really appreciated your talk. It has not only been inspiring, but it has certainly for me given me the motivation to really think about how you come across. I want to know what list I'm on. I want to know if I'm on the de-energizer list or the energizer list. So thank you very much indeed. For students who are still with us, please, I've just got a little slide up there. Please be mindful of all of the wraparound support that is available there to you via the Future Skills website. Also, again, upcoming sessions, please revisit the Future Skills Week website. You'll see there that Billy is on again tomorrow, talking about presenting with impact. If you have not already signed up for that session, I most certainly would encourage you to do so. Billy's personal projection tomorrow at 12:30 to 1:30. I would also guide you to a session on Wednesday, how to kickstart your career in the new world. Tor Abrams, who earned 6 figures by the time he was 26 years old, and he travels the globe giving his strategy to students like you and wants to share with you. So feel free to check into any of those sessions. We would be delighted to see you. And in the meantime, Billy, again, sincere thanks for joining us. And we will see you at your other sessions later on in the week. Thank you very much, everyone else, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.